figuring out your business name. So before you even figure out whether you're going to be a sole prop or whether you're going to be an LLC for your business, think about your business name first. It's a really important first step because you want to make sure, number one, that you're protecting your business name, and number two, that you're not infringing on anyone else's business name and or trademark. So what I recommend that people doing, again, this is a step that, you know, it's kind of inherent, right? You start your business and you think about it, but people aren't doing is they are not searching to make sure that they're not infringing on anyone else's intellectual property with their business name. So what I want you guys to do before you kind of make your business name public is search the Secretary of State website and see if there are any other business entities that hold that name. You can literally just Google Secretary of State business search and you'll pop up and there'll be a search bar. Almost every single state has the capability to search that. So make sure that you're looking up in LLCs and or corporations just to make sure that that business name isn't already in use. The second is to search the US Patent and Trademark Office. Again, this is really important that you want to make sure that you're not going to be infringing on anyone else's trademark. Just go to uspto.gov. I'll put it in the chat. I'll mention this this website again, but if you go to uspto.gov, there is a section on the right side of the page where you can search for trademarks, and then you're going to search the TESS basic word search. Just go ahead and go into that search bar, put in the business name that you're intending to be using or the business name that you are currently using, and see if anything pops up. If something pops up and it's in the same similar field to what you're going to be doing, then it's obviously going to be my recommendation that you pick a different business name. What people don't realize, and I'll talk about this a little bit later in trademarks, I think I have it on my slide as well, but you can be sued for trademark infringement even if you are using a trademarked name and you don't know that it exists. So it's really important to make sure that you're searching the US Patent and Trademark Office for your business name before anything, right? Before we do our marketing, before we set up our website. This is really important because, again, if that name pops up, you could potentially be sued for trademark infringement. And claiming, you know, oh, I didn't know I had to do a search. It doesn't, they just passed this law in, actually, it was 2020 when they passed it. It's been almost 2 years. So again, it's a really important step to make sure that you're doing that. And then lastly, just do a general internet search. Just go onto Google and put that in there. See if anyone's using the business name that you want to use. Again, if something pops up, change your name. I know that we really fall in love with the names that we want to be using. So I can understand how frustrating that is, but it's certainly, again, better to have to change your name and your marketing now than have to do it down the road and pay tens of thousands of dollars because you're infringing on someone's trademark. Okay, so once you've done that, then I recommend taking a look at what business entity is right for you. And then I just put a little pro tip down there: never commingle your business funds. This means that whether you are an LLC or you are a sole proprietor, meaning that you don't file a formal LLC, then you want to make sure that you open up a separate business bank account and you're keeping your personal assets, your personal funds separate than your business funds, even if you aren't a formal LLC. That's really important to do. Okay, let's talk about being a sole proprietorship. This is the cheapest and easiest way to start your business. You just basically start doing business. So when you don't file a formal entity, that's called a sole proprietorship. And you basically are just going to put yourself out there. And this is whether or not it is your name that's your business name or a completely different name that's your business name. So if your name is not your legal name, let's say that I open up a jewelry store and I want to name it Sunshine Jewelry, that's obviously not my name, then there are some additional steps that you need to take. So the first and foremost, you're going to file for what's called a DBA, which stands for Doing Business As, in the county where you're doing business. This is an essential step because you are going to be letting people know that the business name is connected to you, right? You want people to be able to connect that dots from a legal perspective. That's actually something that's considered to be a legal requirement when you are a sole proprietorship. So again, you can just Google DBA and then the county, and you'll have to pay their fees. And then you're going to have to publish something in a local newspaper for a week apart for 4 weeks, and then you go back to the local office and they will give you your DBA. Again, it just establishes that connection. So if you are going to remain to be a sole proprietorship, then you also want to make sure that you get a business license. Not every single county or city requires a business license. So make sure that you are, checking your box there. I've found that local government offices that are doing, business licenses and DBAs and that sort of thing, everybody tends to be really nice in those offices. So if you just go ahead and do a search, you can call your local office and ask them if they require you to have a business license. Most likely they do, but there are some some cities that don't require it. So now, some things to consider when you are a sole proprietorship. Sole proprietorships aren't considered to be what's called a separate legal entity. I like to tell people that when you file for an LLC or a corporation, it's like your business is a completely different person. So that means that when you are a sole proprietor, you and your business are one and the same. So that means that your business assets, your personal assets are all going to be lumped together, which leaves you open for liability in claims and lawsuits. That means that if you were to have a dispute with a client, a vendor, someone that is alleging that you're infringing on their trademark, they can go after your personal assets because, like I said, a sole proprietorship, you're not creating a separate entity, so you and your business are one and the same. And people don't really tend to think about that when, especially if you're a products-based business, but again, you could be sued for trademark infringement. They can go after your home, your savings. A lot of people think, well, I'm just, selling jewelry or candles or something like that. But if someone has an allergic reaction to something that you are selling, right, you're really leaving yourself open and exposed in that way, which is a really great segue into what an LLC is. An LLC stands for a limited liability company, and it's a little bit more challenging to set up depending on where you are, only because there are more boxes that you have to check, right? So what it entails is filing articles of organization with the Secretary of State, and then any other requirements that they have. For example, in the state of California, you're also required to file what's called a statement of information, which is just basically updating the state on who are the members of the LLC, who holds the LLC. You also need to have an operating agreement in place. This isn't as important necessarily if you are a single member LLC, but an operating agreement is essentially like a playbook for your business, right? It's letting you know exactly what you can and can't do. If you want to add a member, if you want to kick a member out, if you want to, how you're going to split the profits, right? You can see how that becomes important when you have a multi-member LLC. You also still need to get a business license and also a DBA potentially. Again, talk to your local office about that. But when you become an LLC, you are creating a separate legal entity. So again, it's like you and your business are two different people. So if you get into a dispute with a client or a vendor or a different company, they can only go after your business assets when you're an LLC, meaning your business bank account. It's really important because you're sheltering your personal assets, you're sheltering yourself, right? When you have an LLC, money flows into the LLC, then you pay yourself. When you pay yourself, that becomes your personal asset. Nobody can go after that necessarily, but they can go after your business assets. So what's in your business bank account? It's true that LLCs can shelter your personal assets, so long as you adhere to what's called business formalities, legal formalities. It's just a really fancy lawyer way of saying dotting your I's and crossing your T's. So again, make sure that you are not commingling your funds. You're opening up a separate business bank account. You have your articles of organization, you have your operating agreement in place, you have your business license in place, your DBA if that is a requirement for you. Because in the eyes of the law, if you're not treating your business like a separate business, then they can still go after your personal assets, right? So if you were to get sued and your creditor comes and says, well, they don't have their business bank account set up, they don't have an operating agreement in place, right? You're not treating your business like truly a separate business. So make sure that you're really doing all of those things and keeping that in a line. That's why I always tell people, it's really important to speak to an attorney before you become an LLC, because a lot of people just go to LegalZoom. They go ahead and, you know, they file their articles through LegalZoom, or they go ahead and do it themselves, but they're not doing all of the other requirements. So it's really important that you do that. I don't think in these slides I talk about a corporation, but let me speak on that really quickly. So a lot of people ask about becoming an S Corp. And an S Corp is a lot different than being an LLC. And an S Corp is actually a tax designation. A lot of people come to me, they say, okay, I want to be an S Corp. Tell me about being an S Corp. I don't ever recommend that a business become a corporation until they've really kind of gotten that, that growth in their business, because I like to tell my clients that becoming a corporation is like putting on an oversized sweater. Your business really has to grow into it. When you become a corporation, you have a board of directors that is going to take control of your company. So it's not just you anymore. You need a president, vice president, secretary, and there's a lot more legal formalities. So there's a lot more boxes that you have to check when you become a corporation. You can ask the IRS to treat your LLC like an S Corp for tax purposes. Full disclaimer, I do not practice tax law. Speak to your CPA about this. But if you are grossing over a certain amount, I think it's like 60,000 a year. I'm not entirely sure on that. Then you can elect to have your LLC treated like an S Corp by the IRS. So it's not changing your LLC designation. It's just allowing you to have some tax benefits there. So that's why I don't go over corporations, because it's really kind of overgrown for most people. Most people are going to fall into the LLC realm. Let me see if there's a question.
Yeah, Natalie.
Okay.
We do have a couple questions. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Aaron asks, my business partner and I are a partnership, but not an LLC. Should we move to an LLC? Someone told me we would have to buy insurance too for like $5,000 a year, and we can't afford that, to be blunt. Okay. So a partnership is two people that are sole proprietors that join together. The thing that's important to remember that when you become a partnership and not an LLC is that if your partner were to do something that would open your business up to liability, you're on the hook for that too. So let's say that your partner purchased a bunch of product from a vendor, and then they got into a dispute and the amount was 10,000, and now you're getting sued. They can go after you, even though your partner is the one that got into negotiations with this vendor. So I would recommend that you become an LLC. It's way more important when you have multiple people together than when you're solo. Although I recommend that you become an LLC when you're solo as well. But when you're an LLC and you have a partnership, what happens is, if you're, let's say in that scenario, if your partner were to get into a dispute with a vendor, they only can go after the LLC assets, not after your assets personally. And I would look into insurance. I don't know exactly what field your business is in, but insurance can be, $5,000 a year sounds very, very high. That's actually more than I pay for insurance, and I have to have a very high insurance policy as an attorney.
I was about to say that too. That's not near, and we have very good insurance also, and that's not nearly that.
Yeah, you're probably going to be paying more like $30 a month. So anyway,
I got a quote that was in the multiple thousands, and I'm like, I have no idea to know if this is like legit. You know, like these people could be scamming me. I have no idea.
Yeah, I would ask around. Ask around. That seems incredibly high. Get a bunch of different quotes, and also take a look at the policy and see what it's covering. If it's like $1 million policy and you don't really see yourself having claims that are $1 million policies, then you can probably bump that down. But I would ask around. Okay, Elizabeth asks, do you suggest we re-register as a DBA sole prop when we move to another city? Yes, you're actually required to re-register as a DBA sole proprietor if you move to another city within the same state. And any small business CPAs, I do have someone that I can recommend that is a tax professional. She is a female business owner. She owns the company with, it's just her and her husband. She's amazing. I can pop her, if that's okay with you. I have to ask Kara, is that all right?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
and we can definitely circulate that information in a follow-up email with the recording also. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, she's amazing. I recommend her to everyone. So, okay, let me get back to this. All right, a couple things to consider before we're done talking about the LLC stuff. Why is this not? Oh no. Okay, let's get back there. I guess I can't just pop in and out of this really quickly. Okay, can you guys see that?
We just see a white screen. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Okay, great. Okay. Before we are done talking about LLCs, so again, speak to your tax advisor, your CPA, to see if it's beneficial from a tax perspective. Obviously, I'm an attorney, I'm giving you the attorney perspective, but there's also some tax advantages to becoming an LLC. And you do have to pay annual fees to the Secretary of State. So just some things to think about. Again, you know, think about your bottom line. There's costs associated to becoming an LLC, but from a legal perspective, obviously sheltering your personal assets is really, really important. So these are just, again, I already mentioned all of this. Speak to your CPA. A lot of things that are something that people don't really consider either when they think about becoming an LLC, because they say, okay, I'll wait until I have a little bit more revenue or income. If you become an LLC later, your customers, your clients, your vendors can still go after your personal assets if at the time you were not an LLC. So it doesn't backtrack, like it doesn't backdate. So just some things to think about. That's why it's so important to become an LLC as soon as you possibly can. Because like I said, if you are currently an LLC, but like a year ago, you weren't an LLC and you got into a dispute with a vendor, they can still go after your personal assets, even though you're currently an LLC. Okay, let's talk about products-based agreements. And basically what I'm going to be talking about today is one key document that you should have in place on your website when you are selling products, and that is your terms of service. We all have encountered a terms of service before, right? We've all purchased yoga pants and candles online. It's that little box that you check whenever you buy anything online. And basically it allows your customers and your clients to agree to certain terms before they purchase anything from you. Shippings and returns policy, refunds policies, intellectual property protection. So if you have certain products that have names that are trademarked and or you want them to be trademarked, right? You want your clients and customers to agree to that intellectual property protection. Also a dispute resolution clause, which is a agreement between yourself and your customers, which dictates how disputes are going to be handled ahead of time. And basically, I write all of mine to say that they will be settled through arbitration and in your home city and state. So you don't have to travel to another city or state to settle a dispute, and you don't have to enter into a lawsuit. Everything will be settled through arbitration. Now, you can imagine what might happen if you don't have a terms of service in place. So from a business perspective, right, you want to have all of your clients and customers agree to things ahead of time. And the reason why that checkbox is so important is because from a legal perspective, if they purchase something and then you come back and say, okay, well, this is my shippings and returns policies, once there has been what's called a bargain for exchange, once they've paid the money and you have now initiated the commerce to send them the product, they're not legally obligated to agree to anything. That's why that checkbox is so important. That's why when we try to buy anything and you forget to check the box, it doesn't let you buy it, right? Because they want you to check the box ahead of time. Now, from a consumer's perspective, you really want a lot of clarity before you're spending your money on things. This is obviously more important depending on the bigger ticket items. But, you know, certainly if you're buying like a sweater and you buy a medium, you get the sweater, you need a large, you know, and they are shippings and returns policies, you come back later and it says that you can't return them. Or have you ever gone to a store and you go back to return something and they only give you store credit and you're upset because now all of a sudden you want your money back. You don't want store credit, right? From a consumer perspective, it's really important that you put those things up ahead of time. Now, legally, it needs to be on a clear and conspicuous location on your website. Again, that's why that box to be checked is really important. If you can't have a little checkbox to put there, then having a line like above or below the purchase button that just says, you know, I agree to the terms of service upon purchasing this item, and then you hyperlink it. That's really important to have as well. It's obviously better to have it so that your customers have to agree to it, but sometimes we have websites that don't have that functionality or capability. And then also it's really important to have shippings and returns policies clearly placed on your site as well. Again, just, you know, from a consumer perspective, that way people know exactly what those are. It limits, you know, any type of disputes that might happen. And I don't have a slide for this, but there's 3 other documents. I don't know why I didn't prepare a slide for this, but there's 3 other documents that should be on your website as well. And I'm going to list those in the chat box. And those are your privacy policy, your terms and conditions, and your disclaimer. And I'll explain what those 3 are. Again, I apologize, I don't have a slide for it. So your privacy policy is a legally required document, and it lets people know the type of data that you're collecting when they visit your site. Even if you have a standalone website that has an image that says coming soon, you're still collecting IP addresses. So you're still legally required to have a privacy policy on the footer of your site. There are certain laws that dictate exactly what need to be in your privacy policy. The question I often get is, well, can I use the privacy policies that are provided by Squarespace or, you know, Wix? And number one, if you read the fine print on those, you're going to see that they say to consult with attorney and replace those at some point in time, because you want to make sure that you have one that's legally compliant and updated. And you certainly want to get it from an attorney who understands the online space and make sure that that's updated so that you are current with the laws, because there is very specific language that needs to be in those privacy policies. Otherwise, you can be fined up to $2,500 per visitor to your site. It's something that you know, the law takes very, very seriously. So make sure that you have that. The second one is called your terms and conditions. That's essentially your content protection. You're letting people know, hey, everything on my site is my own intellectual property. You can't use it without my express written permission. This covers things like the branding on your site. If you have a custom font, if you are naming your product specific things, the name of your business, right? Anything that's on your website that is going to be protected from intellectual property perspective, that's going to be covered through your terms and conditions. And then lastly is your disclaimer. Now, some companies don't need the disclaimer as much as others, but your disclaimer basically says everything on my site is for general and informational purposes only. I'm not intending to diagnose, treat, or cure anything. Also, all the testimonials on my website are the words of my customers. They are in no way a guarantee of using this product. So again, obviously some businesses are going to need that more. If you have anything that is topical in nature, lotions, you know, lip balm, something like that, you're going to want that a little bit more than, let's say, a jewelry company. But it's really important to have that on there anyways, just to make sure that you CYA, cover your assets. And so those are additional ones to have on your website. Again, your privacy policy, your terms and conditions, and your disclaimer, and those all go on the footer of your website. Does anyone have any questions about that before I move forward with trademarks? Okay. All right, let's talk about trademarks. This is the fun stuff. Everybody wants to know about trademarks. Okay, so trademark registrations. Let's talk about what trademarks are first and foremost. Trademarks are a type of intellectual property protection that essentially is going to identify and distinguish one brand from another and make it easier for a consumer to quickly figure out who has produced a particular product. Trademarks cover words, phrases, symbols, designs, or a combination of them, so that, again, a consumer can quickly identify based on the name or the logo exactly where that product is coming from. And if you think about a brand like Nike, Nike has several different trademarks. They have their logo, their signature swoosh. They have their catchphrase, just do it. And then they also have their business name, Nike. And they have multiple thousands of different trademarks on different things. But you can see how using a combination of all of those things, you can really start protecting your brand. So basically it helps to prevent brand dilution. I give this really, really lame example, and I apologize to all you creatives out there. I am not creative. I'm very left brain. So my example is if I were to create an athletic wear company and I were going to name it Pikey, obviously the first thing that you would think about is Nike. And a trademark is going to prevent me from creating that name and or using it in a consumer space, because it's going to prevent brand dilution for Nike. So that's really why it's important to have a trademark in place. And again, even though Pikey isn't the exact name as Nike, it's something that's so substantially similar that, again, it's going to prevent me from using that name. This brings me to what's called the likelihood of confusion test. So if you're using a business name, this is also for products names or slogans for your business, or you have a name that you want to trademark, it's important that you're not infringing on anyone else's trademark or trademark application. And that's where the likelihood of confusion test comes in. Again, think about this Nike Pikey thing. So what this test says is, if there is a likelihood that a consumer would be confused between your intended mark and an existing trademark, then it's going to prevent you from not only using that name, but having that name trademarked. That's why I said, first and foremost, the first thing that I recommend that you do for your business is to go into the US Patent and Trademark Office and look in that database. Again, you don't have to know that a trademark exists on a particular name to be sued for trademark infringement. So it's really important to do those trademark searches. And what I recommend people do, obviously, when I file for a trademark, I do a thorough trademark search. I know exactly what to look for, because what a lot of people do is they will go into the US Patent and Trademark Office and they'll search for the exact name that they want to use. And that doesn't come up and they think, okay, great, I'm totally fine, I can use it. But again, think of that Nike Pikey. If you're searching for Pikey, that's not going to come up, but it's obviously going to conflict with the Nike brand. So search for things that are substantially similar. If something comes up, then you know that you can't use it. If nothing comes up, then go ahead and engage with attorney, such as myself, and have us perform a thorough trademark search for you, because there's little nuances in trademark law that we look for. Okay, so you have your idea, right? What are the next steps? Okay, this is similar to your business name. Number one, do a general Google search. That'll give you an idea of whether a trademark exists or not. And what people don't realize is that trademark and intellectual property law protects the first person to use the mark in commerce rather than the first person to file for a trademark. So a lot of times, you'll search the internet and you find a name that looks similar to the one you want to use, but it's not trademarked. And you think, okay, great, I'm just going to go ahead and use it. But that's actually protected by common law intellectual property rights. And that still means that you cannot use it. So that general Google search will really help you there. Again, the second thing is to do that basic word search with the US Patent and Trademark Office. And then best is to do a search with an attorney. I consider myself to be, an anti-used car salesman kind of attorney. So I always tell people, look, you don't have to pay an attorney to know if a name pops up that you shouldn't be using it. Do these searches first for your name, your business name, podcast name, right? Any name that you're using that's kind of a signature thing in your business or a slogan. Do those searches on your own first. You don't have to pay someone to tell you if something pops up that you shouldn't be using it.
I just have a quick question, Natalie, to clarify
Sure.
that. So you mean that, so say if Mary Sue's body wash was, using that in 2019, selling body wash in 2019 with that name, but then I have Cara Sue's body wash that comes in, or maybe Mary Sue, but I go ahead and trademark that. It's still really the 2019 version Mary Sue that has that trademark rights, because they've been selling under that name before I trademarked it.
Yeah. So this is where you can see how hiring an attorney to do a trademark is really important, because there's all these little nuances, right? Okay, number one, are they still currently using it? Let's say they had that in 2019, but they haven't been active on social media, or they haven't really been selling anything for the past 6 months. Does that mean that it's now available to use? You know, again, these are all things that are kind of covered through trademark law. And again, it depends on the scenario. If it was 2018 and they haven't been using it, it's now 2022, I'd say you're fine. If it was 6 months ago, you know, it's kind of borderline there. So first and foremost, take a look to see if they're still actively using it, right? Again, if it's something that's really old and they haven't been using it in a long time, you know, you're probably safe there, but again, consult with an attorney, full disclosure. And then the other thing to think about is that likelihood of confusion test, right? Is a consumer going to be confused between Mary Sue's body wash and Cara Sue's body wash? Maybe. I mean, there's an argument there, certainly, that there would be. But what about Mary Sue's jewelry and Cara Sue's body wash? Is there a likelihood of confusion there, right? Sometimes we have a business name that we search and there's something completely different that they're selling than what we're selling. And so again, that's why it's important to engage with an attorney. But also, you know, that likelihood of confusion test, just run it through your mind. Like, take yourself out of your love for this business name. A lot of times when people come out with the business name, it's like they're so married to it, which I totally understand, but it clouds people's judgment in terms of using a name, because they'll see something else and they're like, can I just add an S, or can I just put an and, right? Like, because they really, really, really want to use that name. I totally get it. But take yourself out of that scenario and ask yourself, if I were to see these two names and these two products, would I be confused? And if the answer is yes, then you should think of a different name. So for example, when I say Colgate, you think of Colgate toothpaste, but there's also a Colgate mattress company. I'm not going to walk into a mattress store, ask for Colgate, and expect them to hand me a tube of toothpaste. There's no brand confusion there. There's no likelihood of confusion there. Those two trademarks can exist. So, and you know, and then I get a lot of questions. Well, what if one's body wash and the other one's perfume, or what, right? Like, there's all these different, again, pull yourself out of that scenario and look at it from a third party perspective. Would I be confused if I were to Google whatever it is, Mary Sue's body wash and perfumes came up?
I have a question about this. So like, it wouldn't occur to me necessarily. I mean, obviously Nike is a huge name, so you know, but in your example of Nike and Pikey, can you do like partial word searches or wildcard searches so that you could just look up IKE athletic wear or something like that?
You can, and you can. When I did the search for Boston Women's Market's trademark, I searched for every single trademark that has the word Boston in it. Thousands upon thousands of trademarks. I had to open every one, take a look and see, right, like what category or class. Because again, if I look up Colgate, there's going to be one that's filed in a class or category for toothpaste. There's going to be another one for mattresses. So, and they can coexist because there's no confusion there. So if you're going to search for something like IKE, you're going to get probably tens of thousands of different records that come back. You can search partially like that, but you want to make sure that if you are going to be doing that, that it's in the same class or category that you are going to be intending to use it in. Again, that's why it's kind of nice to hire an attorney to do it, so you don't have to bother waste your time to try to do it. And I always do them when I file for a trademark registration, because number one, it's prudent. When you file with something like InkFile or LegalZoom, they don't do thorough trademark searches. There's not an attorney, you know, no lawyers save money, right? But no lawyers, no legal. So they're not going through the records and checking to see. They're literally just filing it for you. And it may come back. What will end up happening, let's say you file for a trademark and there is a conflicting mark. What's going to happen is that mark, when you file for the application, it gets assigned to an examining attorney who takes a look at a number of different things. Can it be trademarked? Is it something that can? And are there any marks that are conflicting? If there is, they're just going to kick out your application. They're going to send something called an office action, which sounds really scary. It's really just a letter. And that office action is going to say that there is a conflicting mark, and it's going to kick it out. So now you filed with LegalZoom and you've spent however much money they charge you, hundreds of dollars or thousands of, I don't know how much they charge. But now you've wasted that money. Whereas if you just had gone to an attorney, I would have been like, this ain't gonna fly. So, but again, don't hire an attorney, do the researches yourself first, because if something pops up, you know that it's not a name that you can use. Okay, so this is gonna make me do the funky thing again. Okay, let's get back in here. And we're on a totally wrong screen. Oh no, we're on the right screen, okay. So do your searches first and foremost. It's really, really, really important. Again, I cannot emphasize enough that you can be sued for trademark infringement, even if you had no idea that a trademark existed. So be very, very, very careful. Make sure you're doing those searches. Just start with a Google search. You don't have to do, when you go onto the US Patent and Trademark Office, it can be very confusing when you do a search in there. They have a very, very archaic website. So just start with a general Google search and see if something pops up. Now, when it comes, again, trademark infringement, when it comes to posting on social media, watch out what you post. Again, you could be infringing on someone else's trademark and not even know it. Make sure you're doing those searches. A lot of people don't think about that when they are posting on social media. That's how people are going to be aware that you're using their mark. So just be very careful. Make sure you're doing all of your searches even before putting your business name out there or your product name or whatever it is. Okay, brief takeaways. Trademark name can be a logo, slogan, catchphrase, or a business name. Make sure that you're going through your content and looking for any potential trademark infringement issues, social media, your website, marketing materials, right? Anything like that. And then make sure that you're performing those searches. And then I'll get to the end and talk about free consultations, but I do free consults for trademarks if anybody wants to talk further about what the process looks like. It's about an 8-month to a year process, and we can chat about, you know, what that looks like and all that fun stuff. So, okay, let's talk about copyright protection. And this may not apply to everyone, but if you have, you know, materials in your business that are potentially protected by copyright, then it's certainly something that I would consider. Copyrights protect what's called original works of art, and that would be anything from, right, workbooks, artwork, music, literature, journal prompts. If you have like, you know, a candle set, and then you also sell like a journal with it, right? Those are all protected by copyright protection. And basically it's preventing other people from stealing or otherwise using your content without your permission. Why would you need a copyright? So what's the point in getting a copyright? Like, don't we all know that you can't just go and copy other people's work, right? You're not going to go onto a blog post and steal someone's blog post and slap it up on your website. We all know that you can't do that. Well, we know that people shouldn't do that, but unless you have filed for a copyright, then it doesn't allow you to sue someone for violating that protected work. So basically, let's say you have a blog, or you have, right, artwork or something. Let's say you create like digital media, or you create your own social media posts. If you don't have some sort of like copyright protection on those, and I'm not saying you should copyright every social media post, but what I am saying is if you have graphics that you've used, a lot of times graphics, you know, just get reposted and then other people will cut them out and use them in their own business, right? Photographs, that type of thing. If you don't have that copyrighted, or if you don't file for copyright protection for that, then you can't threaten them with a lawsuit. And I'm not an attorney that advocates conflict necessarily, but basically the only thing you can do is go to them and say, hey, that is my original work, and you can't use it. But there's nothing else that you can do. You can't threaten them with a lawsuit. You can't stop them from using it. They may not actually stop using it, right? They may just block you on social media and be done with it. Same thing with a trademark. If you don't have a full registration for your trademark, you can't tell someone else that they can't. There's no weight behind your punch, right? You can say, hey, that's my mark, you can't use it. But that's really the only thing that you can do, is say to them, you can't use it. You can't actually threaten them with a lawsuit, which is really going to prevent them from doing it. And that can only come from having the full copyright registration or a full trademark registration. So what does the copyright process look like? You file an application with the United States Copyright Office. You distinguish what type of work it is: artwork, literature, media, photography, whatever it is. They ensure that it is something that can be eligible for a copyright. And then you go ahead and submit your application, pay the fee, and the process takes 6 months to 13 months, just depending on what it is and if there's any issues there. Let me see. There's a question. How does copyright work with an artist's multiple works of art? So there is a way that you can submit multiple works of art to the Copyright Office. It is just something that you are going to be submitting as an application. If it's something that's in a series, then you can submit it in a different way than if it's just a one-off piece of artwork. And you're basically just going to be submitting evidence of the artwork, and they're going to be taking a look at it. I hope that answers your question, Anya. Right now, my business is selling original artwork as stickers. Would I have to copyright every single design? Is there a way to copyright? Yeah, so again, if they are considered to be a series and it's kind of a legal designation, then you can copyright them all together in one big chunk. Otherwise, you would have to submit them individually. And we can talk about that. If you sign up for a free consult, I can take a look and let you know if it's considered to be a series or just one-off ones. And what I would recommend in something like that is to take a look and see if anything has been used before, or if anything is like more popular, right? If it can't be submitted as a series, if they have to be submitted one-off, then you can certainly prioritize those and submit them, based on popularity or based on ones that you've seen other people using before. Does anyone else have any questions about copyrights? Okay. So now we're going to do a little Q&A session. I'm going to stop share again, all the back and forth. I know that there were a few questions that were asked. Someone asked about the trademark process, which we went through. And then let's see, we asked about LLC, sole proprietor. We went through that as well. And then one of the other questions that we got was how to prioritize in terms of financially to invest in the legal in your business. It's a really great question. And I love it when people ask me this, because I have an attorney answer and have a non-attorney answer. Really, what I like to tell people to do is, I'm a business owner as well, so I completely understand investing in your business, right? I didn't go out and hire someone to build my website and then, hire someone to help me with social media and do all these other things. I built my business bits and pieces too. So I understand what it's like to spend initial costs on things in your business when you're just starting up. And from a legal perspective, I think the prioritization should come from two places: your LLC or your trademark. And what I like to tell people think of their legal like layers of a cake, right? First you start here, then you do this, then you do that. I encourage people to think of legal like a wall around yourself and your business, protecting yourself and your business. There's different sections of the wall that are protecting different things. Your LLCs and your business entity essentially is protecting your personal assets. Your trademark is protecting your name, and then your contracts, which is your website documents, and your terms of service is protecting your interaction with your customers. That is they're all protecting you completely different ways, right? Can you do your trademark first and then your LLC? Sure. Can you get your contracts in place and then do a trademark? Sure. You really can do them in any way that you want, rather than thinking of them as layers of a cake. Again, they're protecting you in totally different ways. So what I like to tell people to do, again, I'm a business owner, I totally get it when it comes to cost. Financially prioritize it for yourself. Really look at, first and foremost, look at what's more important to you, right? Is the business name something that you want to, are you hiding something with your business name in terms of like, you don't want to release it yet because you don't want anyone to use it? Then think about starting with your trademark. If you are not quite in a perspective to financially invest in your trademark and you want to do something like your LLC, then start there. Think about from a financial perspective as well. You can really work with an attorney such as myself in a way that is very cost effective. I do payment plans on my trademark services. So you can invest in a way that isn't going to be breaking the bank, and you can do it in bits and pieces. So, that's my perspective there. Just kind of think about your own prioritization and what you want to do personally. You don't necessarily have to do one thing before another. Yeah, if you realize that, like, okay, I'm having a lot of interactions with clients and customers, and that's kind of picking up, then maybe consider doing your website documents and your terms of service first.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love thinking it in that way, that it's not a layered cake. You don't have to go in a particular order. It's really what is most important. That's great. I do personally.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I do have a question for you, but if you have anything else about that.
I was just going to say, don't let the financial trip you up with legal. It's really, really, really important to get it in order. So don't let that scare you. Budget for it. Do it. Look at your financials, whatever makes sense to you from a financial perspective. Just start there. Just get something in order.
Yeah. My question was about website accessibility. I know that this is a pretty hot topic right now with websites in general.
Yeah.
And it's actually something that a company that I used to work for, we had personal experience with it, where we thought we were doing everything right to make our website accessible. And then we got sued. And it's unfortunate what the company's attorney said was, or the former company I worked for, the attorney said that they've seen a huge increase in these kind of claims since COVID. And unfortunately, many of them are just people taking advantage of the protections. And I guess, are there certain policies that we should all have in place on our website? Do you have any advice about how to even just get started? I know that, a lot of the website builders, they have their meta tags, and then they have the descriptors you're supposed to fill in. But, we had all of that. We had everything, and we still, got slammed. So do you have advice about that?
I'm looking for.
Can I
have a
just
podcast on it.
interject a quick story? I work at a university as my full-time gig, and our CIO basically said that just meeting the minimum ADA requirements is no longer enough. So it kind of sounds like maybe that's something you ran into, because we even, for us, it's not necessarily, I mean, of course it impacts students, but it's also, we had a staff member with a visual impairment and bought all kinds of special equipment and still couldn't make it fit. And it's tricky. Yeah,
it is definitely, and there has been a very big rise in this. I have a podcast episode. It's episode number 6. It's from October 15th of 2020. It's called Listen to This One If You Have a Website. And I interviewed someone who's local. His name is Michael Kramer, and he actually goes in and does this for websites. I do caution against using a plugin, because you can't always ensure that it's legally compliant. I would recommend hiring in a company like his, where that's literally all they do. And, I'm not incredibly well versed in ADA website compliance from that perspective. It's a whole different area of law. But it is something that's really important. I think just be very cautious and consider to put it into your budget as well, because it is something, and it's one of those things, right, where unfortunately there's a lot of people out there that are taking advantage of the fact that websites do not have this compliance on there, because people are getting payouts from it. And I mean, I hate to say that, but it is really happening right now. So put it on your radar, put it as something to consider. It can be quite an investment. I think that when I was looking into doing mine, I think it was like maybe $1,500. So it certainly is a cost when it comes to your business, but $1,500 versus $10,000. And usually what they do is they'll sue you, and then you'll come, and there's no defense there. If your website is not compliant, it's not compliant. And the cost of a lawsuit is very expensive. So they'll usually just settle.
Exactly.
And then you just have to pay them. So it's out there. It's kind of scary, but add it to your list of things to do. I can't speak too much on it. Listen to that podcast episode, because he's well more way versed in this than I am. So
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Who else has some questions while we're here? I know it is already the 7 o'clock mark. We definitely don't, want to keep people past this time too much. But if there's anything pressing that anyone wants to add, or if anyone wants to share a personal story with their experiences about any of these topics, we're totally all ears. I think one of the best ways to learn is obviously just hearing each other's experiences and sharing those concepts and those ideas. If anyone has anything, go ahead, Anita.
Yeah, I just have a copyright question. So I'm an artist, and everything I do right now is just all original works. I haven't like done any digital prints or anything like that. So it's all just original. Is that something that needs to be copyrighted?
So you have that displayed on a website, or how are you selling it?
Right now, it's just Instagram.
So let me put it in this perspective. Someone could screenshot one of your works from your Instagram, crop everything out, and maybe use it as a background for a social media post or their website or something like that. When you think about it from that perspective, it's something, and again, what you can do if you don't have copyright protection is ask them to take it down, but you're not really packing that punch. If they know, I mean, again, we know that we can't do this, but people do it all. Think about how many times a photo is shared and now all of a sudden it goes viral. You see it all over everyone's like websites or social media or whatever. I mean, I would consider doing it if you were just selling it like, you just have a website, but none of your images are on there, that sort of thing, then I probably wouldn't suggest it. But if you have it on social media, I mean, yeah, I would. And
Okay.
you also, when you sign up for a social media account, Instagram isn't necessarily going to be helping you, and neither does Facebook. Part of their terms do state, obviously, you can't infringe on anyone else's trademark or copyright protection or intellectual property protection at all. But you're agreeing when you sign up that they're not going to necessarily be enforcing it for you.
Okay.
So just something to think about.
Thank you.
There's a chat. Erica asked, I currently have a business partnership with my husband. Could you speak to the process of transitioning from a partnership to an LLC? Yeah, it's a simple filing. So you're just going to be filing your articles of organization with the Secretary of State, get an operating agreement 100%. I know it seems, when you're a single member LLC or you like own a business with your partner, a lot of times people don't think about doing an operating agreement. But again, if you think about your business like a totally different person, if you and your husband are doing business with a separate person, you're going to want to have an agreement between the three of you. And that's essentially what an operating agreement is done. So speak to an attorney, but start with your operating agreement, your articles of organization that you're going to file, business license, possibly a DBA, any other requirements. You may have some licensing requirements or other things, just depending on what your business is. But speak to an attorney. It's not a terribly difficult transition from a partnership to an LLC. And then I'm just going to share my screen one last time to show you guys where to find me. If you can still feel free to ask away as I'm putting this up there. That's really frustrating that it does that. Okay. So, it still says my screen is paused. Oh, there we go. Okay.
There you go.
So there's where you can find me. I'm on Instagram at Natalie Puglisi. I do free legal consultations. If you go to bit.ly/Natalie chat, then we can sign up for something and you can, have me for a little bit of time to ask me all your questions. I offer done for you legal templates. So the website documents and that terms of service, I have legal templates for them that you can plug and play into your business, get legal compliant. It literally will take you like 20 minutes to fill them out. It's so easy, but I'm here to support you if you guys have any questions about that. Trademarks and copyrights. And then I also have a legal membership as well. A couple more questions that popped up. Aaron asked, we have an EIN and a partnership agreement. However, I'm not entirely sure. We have a business license. How do we get it? Just Google the city and your business license and see what pops up, and it'll take you to your local office. And I would just call them and see what the requirements are for a business license. Like I said, people that work in local offices tend to be really nice. I've always found that. So that would be my recommendation there.
Okay, we definitely went to the Watertown like city clerk's office and like got something notarized, and so maybe we do have it.
You can also call them and see if they'll take a look in their records and see if you have it or they have it on file. So that's also something that you could do. And then I do offer a discount for Boston Women's Market members. It's 10% off my legal templates and bundles. Like I said, if you guys don't have your website documents in place, including your terms of service, I do have what I call product-based bundle, and you can get all of them. And if you use the code BWM10, and that's all caps, then you can get 10% off of the templates and bundles. So
that's awesome. Do you have any bundles or any information that for businesses that might be more service-based, like for example, a yoga studio or something like that?
Yeah. So, and you can use the same code for any of those as well. I have bundles and templates for what I call health and fitness coaches, which would be yoga. There's different disclaimers, as you can imagine. A yoga studio is going to need to disclaim different things than a jewelry company. So they are written differently, but I have ones for what I call health and fitness coaches, which is just anyone in the fitness world. Online coaches, which I call coach and educators, financial coaches, products-based businesses, event planners. I mean, there's a bunch on there. And they're really, really easy to use. And like I said, I'm here to support you, but there's also a video that you get that will show you exactly how to fill them out and put them up on your website so that you can be compliant, don't have to worry about it, check your boxes.
Perfect.
Let's see, there's one. Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
this has been amazing.
Yeah, this has been great. I think this is one of those topics. I know last year when we did this, it's just so intimidating facing this stuff and who to call. How do you know if you're clicking on the right links? I know I've encountered that where I'm like, I don't know if this is the right form I'm supposed to be filling out because they're all so, I don't know. So taking the time to talk about these topics, even though they can be overwhelming, I think it's just so important. And particularly, I mean, even though we did this last year, I'm writing notes myself and rechecking things. So I think it's awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm here to support you guys. If you want to sign up and do a chat, even if you already have stuff, like, let me just make sure I got all my boxes checked. I'm happy to meet and do a chat and support you guys in any way that I can. I know it's intimidating. It does not have to be, and it does not have to break the bank. This can be something you guys can do. You can do it in a way that's affordable and then just kind of move on from it. So focus on the things that you like, the creative stuff. I'll do the left brain stuff.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate it. And as I said in the beginning, our next workshop is on March 23rd, all about money for entrepreneurs, both from a business perspective, but then also from your personal perspective also. So I hope you join us for that. And Africa and I thank you so much for joining us today. Bye, everyone.